What the Sanders campaign is trying to do is to link donations to my political campaign, or really donations to anyone's political campaign, with undue influence, with changing people's views and votes. I've never, ever done that, and I really do resent the implication, or as I said the other night, the insinuation.
We have to stop the endless flow of secret, unaccountable money that is distorting our elections, corrupting our political process, and drowning out the voices of our people.
You know, get out of the way and let corporations do whatever they want and let their, big donors do whatever they want. Well, that's not going to work.
Senator Obama has some questions to answer about his dealings with one of his largest contributors, Exelon, a big nuclear power company. Apparently, he cut some deals behind closed doors to protect them from full disclosure in the nuclear industry.
Which the Clinton Foundation and mega bank UBS overlap. Here's the story. It's happening particularly during Hillary Clinton's time as Secretary of State. The paper reports that in 2009, Clinton was alerted by her Swiss counterpart that the IRS was suing the bank to find out which Americans had secret accounts there. The Journal reports within months, Clinton announced a tentative legal settlement, an unusual intervention by the top U.S. diplomat. UBS ultimately turned over information on just a fraction of the accounts sought by the IRS. The paper points out that after that, UBS's donations to the Clinton Foundations multiplied. From 2008 and earlier, they totaled about 60,000. As of 2014, about 600,000. UBS has also paid former President Clinton $1.5 million to do Q&A sessions.
Wow.
According to the paper, that makes them the top corporate source of speech income since he left the White House.
Wow.
About some large and suspiciously timed donations to the Clinton Foundation. The New York Times reports the Russian businessmen behind the company Uranium One donated more than $2 million to the Clinton Foundation, and their allies paid Bill Clinton more than $500,000 to speak as the State Department and Secretary Hillary Clinton decided if it was okay for Uranium One to continue acquiring more and more uranium, including 1/5 of the supply of uranium in the United States. And the reason that the State Department got to weigh in is because uranium has national security impacts. It can be used to build a weapon of mass destruction. By the way, Uranium One now controlled by the Russian government. But these allegations of foreign money getting a foreign company an unfair look being dismissed by a Clinton spokesman who says that to suggest the State Department under then Secretary Clinton exerted undue influence in the U.S. government's review of the sale of Uranium One is utterly baseless. And the Times points out, though, that similar deals, like one that would have given the Chinese control of uranium in Nevada, have been killed by the U.S. government. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thanks. Do you believe it?
Hillary Clinton's single-payer pivot greased by millions in industry speech fees. What's going on here?
Well, basically, you had a candidate who, when she was first lady, was actually strongly supportive of the idea of single payer. She didn't actually put it in her plan at the time, and she didn't advocate for it necessarily as being done at that moment, but she did tell other people that it would work well. She had told a conference that if they didn't do health reform, we would have single payer by 2000, like it would be inevitable. And basically, her argument had always been that, hey, it's a good system, it's just we can't do it politically right now. But now that her argument has shifted, her argument is to say, hey, Bernie Sanders is going to come in, he is going to do this, and it's going to be terrible. It's a terrible system that will dismantle all your other health care. It'll be too costly. It'll raise taxes.
Sounds like the Republican hit on Obamacare.
Exactly. It's a complete shift from where she was as First Lady when she was seen as heading up the more progressive wing of the White House in healthcare arguments. And I think that, an important bit of context to this is that there's been a lot of industry capture with Secretary Clinton. Since she's left office, she gave 13 speeches to various healthcare firms, ranging from doctors' associations that oppose single-payer healthcare to drug companies. And altogether, these 13 speeches earned her about $2.8 million since 2013. Now, to put that in perspective, most Americans don't earn that much money in their entire lifetimes. Like, lifetime earnings of like an average bachelor's degree holder is like 2.4 million. So really, she earned more than someone earns in their entire lifetime in speeches just to healthcare firms over the past 2 years. And again, this was money directly into her bank account. It wasn't for the foundation, and it wasn't relative to the campaign. They weren't campaign funds. This was personal speaking fees.
You tell a story that, to me, illustrates what has happened to our political system in regard to the middle class, in regard to democracy in the country as a whole, and it involves Hillary Clinton.
I had written an op-ed about a piece of pending bankruptcy legislation. The credit card companies have been pushing to try to tighten the bankruptcy laws, sort of like locking the doors to the hospitals and then claiming nobody's sick in America. So they were trying to get the bankruptcy laws constricted, so that fewer families could get in. Why? Because you can make more money if those families don't go into bankruptcy, if you're a credit lender. And so I'd written an op-ed about how this would fall disproportionately hard on women who were raising families and who would be put in the position under this bill of trying to compete with Citibank, MasterCard, Visa, Bank One, for getting alimony and child support from their ex-husbands. Mrs. Clinton evidently saw
the First Lady.
The First Lady. She was then First Lady. This is in the 1990s, late 1990s. Mrs. Clinton saw the piece, and I got a call from the White House. And they said Mrs. Clinton was going to be in town to give a speech in Boston, and would I come and meet with her? I'd go over the law. It's a complex law. Went over the economics, showed her the graphs, showed her the charts, and she got it. Within 20 minutes, she could play where the rest of it would come. Well, then that will mean this part's happened. That will mean this has happened. I said, yes, that's right. And at the end of the conversation, Mrs. Clinton stood up. She said, let's get our picture taken, which we did. And she said, Professor Warren, we've got to stop that awful bill, referring to this bankruptcy bill that's sponsored by the credit card companies. So I left. She went back to Washington, and I heard later from someone who was a White House staffer that there were skid marks in the hallways when Mrs. Clinton got back as people reversed direction on that bankruptcy bill.
They were supporting the industry, and because of her...
President Clinton had been showing that this was another way that he could be helpful to business. It wasn't a very high visibility bill. And when Mrs. Clinton came back with a little better understanding of how it all worked, they reversed course, and they reversed course fast. And indeed, the proof is in the pudding. The last bill that came before President Clinton was that bankruptcy bill that was passed by the House and the Senate in 2000, and he vetoed it. And in her autobiography, Mrs. Clinton took credit for that veto, and she rightly should. She turned around a whole administration on the subject of bankruptcy. She got it.
And then?
One of the first bills that came up after she was Senator Clinton was the bankruptcy bill. This is a bill that's like a vampire. It will not die, right? There's a lot of money behind it. And
the bill her husband had vetoed.
Her husband had vetoed it very much at her urging.
And?
She voted in favor of it.
Why?
As Senator Clinton, the pressures are very different. It's a well-financed industry. A lot of people don't realize that the industry that gave the most money to Washington over the past few years was not the oil industry, was not pharmaceuticals, it was consumer credit products. Those are the people the credit card companies have been giving money, and they have influence.
And Mrs. Clinton was one of them, as senator. Yeah.
She has taken money from the groups, and more to the point, she worries about them as a constituency.
So what does this mean, though, to these people, these millions of people out there whom the politicians cavort in front of as favoring the middle class, and then are beholden to the powerful interests that undermine the middle class? What does it say about politics today?
This is the scary part about democracy today. We're talking again about the impact of money. The credit industry on this bankruptcy bill has spent tens of millions of dollars lobbying. And as their profits grow, they just throw more into lobbying for how they can get laws that will make it easier and easier and easier to drain money out of the pockets of middle-class families.
Sparked some major concerns. We're talking about the deals which the United States government have brokered during the tenure of Hillary Clinton as the head of the State Department. One deal was particularly eye-catching, according to the International Business Times in their investigation. This is a $29 billion arms deal between the Saudi Arabia and the United States, in a nutshell supplying the Saudi army with fresh U.S. equipment. Now, 2 years before this deal was signed by the State Department, which was headed by Hillary Clinton back then, the state of Saudi Arabia made a $10 million donation to the Clinton Foundation. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. Over the years when Hillary Clinton ran the State Department, the U.S. government brokered more than $165 billion worth of arms deals with 20 countries. And most of these countries have, in fact, donated money to the Clinton Family Foundation. The donations ranged from $50,000 to $10 million. Not only that, but there's another side of the story here, too. The companies, the U.S. companies, defense contractors, and companies like Boeing have also been lobbying their interests with the State Department, and they've also donated money to the foundation. These graphs show how much money many of the major defense contractors in the United States have actually donated before having their deals brokered by the State Department. All this information has been available publicly, and the International Business Times, during their investigation, picked it up from open sources like the Clinton Foundation statistics and the State Department and defense contractors statistics. But there is another side to that as well. The companies which had brokered their deals through the State Department when Hillary Clinton was running it had also paid $2.5 million for speeches made by Hillary's husband, the former President Bill Clinton. And this has sparked concerns among many whether this may have violated the U.S. Constitution, because it says openly that no U.S. government official may take donations or contributions or gifts from any other bodies or any other foreign governments while at office.